Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to this special Talk to Me. This edition, we're going to be talking about the Turkish election, and we're going to be looking at how this election is going to be an impact on the ummah, inshallah. Joining us today in the studio, we have Mustafa, and we also have online our political commentator Hakan, and we also have our analyst from the Middle East Monitor, Nazim Ahmed. Assalamu alaikum, Mustafa.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Inshallah. Brothers and sisters, before we start on our conversation, we are going to be showing you a short video on the election results, inshallah. So stay, watch this, and come back to us soon, inshallah.
On Sunday, Recep Tayyip Erdogan was re-elected as Turkey's president. He called for unity and solidarity after winning a historic election runoff against secular opposition rival Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu. The 69-year-old leader overcame the most powerful opposition alliance to ever face his party and Turkey's worst economic crisis in a generation. President Erdogan told his supporters outside his presidential palace in Ankara, "I would like to thank each and every member of our nation who has once again given us the responsibility of governing the country for the next 5 years with the choice they have made. God willing, we will be deserving of your trust. We should come together in unity and solidarity." Secular opposition leader Kılıçdaroğlu pushed Erdogan into Turkey's first runoff on May 14th and narrowed the margin further in the second round. Erdogan told his supporters that this was the most important election of the modern era in its 100-year history as a post-Ottoman republic.
Brothers and sisters, don't forget this is a live show, so you can join the discussion by calling 0203 515 0757. Or if you're watching us on social media, you can leave us your comments and we'll be able to pick them up, inshallah. We're going to be going over ahead to one of our guests, Hakan, who is a political commentator. Assalamu alaikum, Hakan. Assalamu alaikum, Hakan. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, Jazakallah khair for joining this discussion, inshallah. My first question to you is, can you tell us a bit about Erdogan's career in his early stages, when he began his political career, inshallah?
Mr. Erdogan has been involved in politics for nearly 5 decades now. So quite a hefty experience. And he's been involved in Turkish politics from a very, very young age. His first, obviously, prominent position he held was when he was elected as a Istanbul mayor, completely unexpectedly, even at the time in 1990s when the secularism was at its quite peak, and being Muslim was meant to be, you face discrimination. As you know, those times our sisters could not go to university because they were wearing hijab, and the military and the harsh secularism that most of the Muslim communities faced at the time was kind of quite harsh. And it's this reaction that made people like Recep Tayyip Erdogan a prominent political leaders, the reaction of the society. And people don't understand why he's so successful. And he is the symbol of the struggle of majority Muslim countries' population that was suppressed by harsh secularism that was being implemented upon us. And so Erdogan carried the mantle from his leader and mentor, Dr. Erbakan, Professor Erbakan, rahimullah, who was one of the first Islamist leaders that Turkey had as a prime minister, as you know, which was cut short by, again, the secular Kemalist, harsh approach they showed to his government at the time, and literally done a coup on him and cut short his government. This is what gave impetus, I suppose, to this new generation of leaders led by Erdogan to come to power as in 2002.
Jazakallah khair, Brother Hakan, for that, inshallah. Mustafa, I'm going to come over to you, and I want to ask you a similar question, but more focused on his policies and achievements.
Thank you. If I may begin with just giving some context, some historical background, just so that we can understand the significance of his achievements and the direction in which Erdogan is going. If we go way back to the creation of the Turkish Republic, there was a number of reforms and revolutions which had come to place, one of which was the hat revolution. And so that quintessential fez hat, which the Muslims of the time used to wear, was banned.
Right.
And there were a number of uprisings in a number of key places within the newly founded Turkish Republic. However, one of which was in a far-flung village in the Black Sea, in the province of Rize, what was known as Bodamya, which is currently known as Güneysu. This is significant because 30 years or so after, a descendant of that village, namely Recep Tayyip Erdogan, would come out and eventually, through his policies, be able to fight for another headgear, in this case for our sisters' right to wear the hijab. For many years it was banned. I think to understand the context of the Turkish Republic was founded in 1923, initially with the state religion being Islam. Soon after that, Islamic part was taken away. And since then, there's been somewhat of a polarization of Turkish society. Are we nationalist? Are we religious? Are we communist? There's so many kind of varying powers there. As Hakan rightly said there, Recep Tayyip Erdogan's mentor for many years was Necmettin Erbakan, who has come out with the Milli Görüş ideology. He was a great ideologue for trying to unite the Muslim Ummah. He came out with the D8, the Developing Eight Union, which included many powerful Muslim countries such as Pakistan and Nigeria, for example. Unfortunately, his tenure was cut short. So Erdogan, in many ways, was raised in this environment. What's significant about Erdogan, however, unlike his mentor, is that he was able to not just rebrand himself, but get the polarizing factors within Turkish society to come closer together. So, for example, Turkey is not a homogeneous country, neither religiously or ethnically. Roughly around 10% of the country, particularly in the southeast, are Kurdish, for example. In the 90s, it was forbidden for our Kurdish brothers to speak Kurdish, for Kurdish songs to be sung. Even many of the Kurds who had moved to the West would struggle to find apartments and such. And Erdogan was able to allow for the Kurdish language not just to be spoken, but to flourish in academia and the cultural front as well. So that was one of his achievements there. Another one is, although Erdogan is a Sunni Muslim, and the state very much has been promoting Sunni Islam, particularly of the Hanafi branch, he started to provide electricity to the Cemevi, which is for the Alevi houses of prayer. So that's another achievement there.
Inshallah. So I'm just gonna pick up this point, yeah. Inshallah, but I'm gonna bring in Brother Nazim. Brother Nazim, I just wanted to ask your view, the international community views on Erdogan, especially in his early segment of his presidential, and now possibly the forecasted view in his second presidential elect, inshallah. We are having some slight issues with his audio, inshallah. We will come back to Brother Nazim when we have that rectified. So picking up on something that you said, the headscarf, which was, you said that it was banned. Now, was this ban widespread, or was it just banned in certain parts of like political buildings and stuff like that?
So it was banned in public buildings. But however, this extended to the culture of society as well. So for example, many women could go out and try to find a job or try to study, and they'll be told outright, you're wearing a headscarf, so you can't get a job, for example. Many of our sisters were unable to get an education. We have, when eventually one of the ladies with a headscarf was chosen and elected into parliament, she was hounded and had to leave and eventually left to Canada. But one of the successes of Erdogan was that in 2013, just 10 years ago, he lifted that ban, and that particular politician who was hounded out of the parliament, Merve Kavakçıoğlu, her daughter became a special advisor to Erdogan.
Yeah, subhanallah. So that's the amazing policy changes, and you can then see the reform and the changes that happen in not just the lives of the parents, but also the lives of the siblings, of the children as well.
Well, this is it. This is, many people try to label him as an Islamist, but he's coming out as a conservative. He's uniting the people, be it ethnically or religiously.
Alhamdulillah, Jazakallah khair. So brothers and sisters, do remember that this is a live show. You can interact with us. You can give us a call live in the studio, 0203 515 0757. Or if you're watching us on YouTube or any other social platform, you can leave us a comment and we'll be able to pick this up, inshallah. We are going to be going over to a break, inshallah, but do come back to us because we're going to be discussing a lot more, and we have a lot more topics to discuss with our guests, inshallah. We're going to be looking at a lot focused on Erdogan and how this Turkish election is going to be impacting us as an ummah, not just in Turkey, but globally, inshallah. Brothers and sisters, do join us back. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Welcome back. And if you've just tuned in, this is Talk to Me special, and we're looking at the Turkish election and how it's impacting us as an ummah, inshallah. Before we went to the break, we all went to one of our guests, Naseem, and I believe we've got him back, and inshallah, we're going to pose the question to him again. Brother Naseem, assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me?
Walaikum salam, I can hear you fine.
MashaAllah. So, Brother Nazim, just before we went on to the break, the question to you was, what's the international community viewpoint on Erdogan from his early presidential run and now his new one, inshallah?
Well, early on, I should say it was optimistic. There were mixed messages, but generally it was quite optimistic and hopeful. Bear in mind that during 2002, height of the war on terror, there was a deep fear and anxiety within the West about political Islam. The idea that political Islam was basically one man, one person, one vote. As soon as they come to power, they will shut the door on democracy. That had been the fear in the West for many, many decades, to disastrous consequences, I would say, in the Muslim world. But Erdogan, he demonstrated that is not the case. He was a conservative, traditional Muslim leader who did not close the door on democracy. And I think there was a change in mood initially, shift in Western capitals about that this could be the person who can balance both secular ideals and Islamic principles, and he could be a model for other Muslim countries. So I think, and also bear in mind at that time as well, Erdogan was economically, he was taking Turkey to new heights with his various infrastructure programs. But ultimately, I would say, because of the positive response, the EU was willing to continue and allow Turkey's accession into the European Union. They were doing massive business deals, foreign companies were investing, and we saw the boom in the late, over the past decade or so in Turkey after Erdogan came to power. So there was a huge boom in the economy, and in a sense that this country was vibrant. It was hugely important, it still is, of course. But the fear which the West had about political Islam, I think that was diminished to some degree. But of course, after the Arab Spring, and now there's I would say, a massive U-turn, in a sense that Erdogan has become an authoritarian, which is really, really unfair. Which authoritarian allows elections after 5 years, contest elections after 5 years. So you can paint him with that really negative brush if you want, which is what has been happening, which is quite unfair in my point of view. We know there's a very big difference between secular democracy and democracy. You can have a democracy without, liberal democracy and democracy. Yes, Erdogan may not be liberal in the Western sense of the word, but how many Western countries are at the moment? If you look around the world at the moment, there's a shift away from liberalism, I would say, towards more conservative, traditional governments as a backlash against liberalism, not just in the US, you'd say.
So on this point, Brother Nazim, I just want to bring in Brother Hakan, which is a nice flow onto the next question I'm going to ask you. Brother Hakan, we know that Erdogan won by 52%. Now, I just wanted to ask you, the reception, how has it been like in Turkey after the results for the election? What's the feeling been like? Because we know that we've seen some great scenes from Turkey, but overall, how would you class it as? Okay, so we're going to come over to Brother Hakan as well. I think we've got a bit of a technical problem there as well with his mic, inshallah. I'm just going to swiftly move on. Okay, I think we've got him back. Brother Hakan, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear. I heard the question as well. It's just I didn't get the
Faddal,
microphone.
inshallah. Take it over, inshallah.
So no, I was just saying, have you seen the Imam dancing on top of a fan in front of AK Parti's building after the election victory? It's the viral video in Turkey at the moment. The point is, people are obviously receptive, quite happy, joyous, and not just in Turkey. I have received so many videos from my friends and my brothers from Lebanon, from Syria, elsewhere, Pakistan, everywhere. I mean, it's just an amazing victory that everybody felt somehow touched by it, if you like. And that's because of the symbolic value of this election victory. Like Brother Nassim said, yes, liberalism is dying, is dead. And those who actually said that they were liberal are the ones who killed it in the first place. They were the ones who actually worked with the dictators and autocratic governments and brutal, murdering dictators like, some names of some countries that we all know. And they didn't mean anything, they didn't mind working with these people, but yet they call Erdogan a dictator or autocratic regime, etc., which is really unfair, as Nassim said, because every 5 years he goes to election. This is 15th local, general, and referendum elections that he won. 15th. And who does that? And this is the only leader in the world, by the way, who actually won everything, every election he went into. The only.
Inshallah.
Sure, go ahead.
Jazakallah khair, brother Nazim, for that. Inshallah. We're going to go over to Mustafa. I just wanted to ask you now, political aid. What does it mean for the policies for Turkey, especially giving to aid to the Middle East and Africa? What does this mean for Turkey? Is this going to continue the policies, international aid, and so forth and so extra, inshallah?
Well, with the Turkish Republic, there has been some policies which are constant, which means that regardless of who's in power, Turkey will remain constant in supporting them. However, their effectiveness will differ greatly, as Erdogan has shown. For example, the main support that the Turkish Republic is supporting is the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus. Turkey was the first Muslim country after the Great Wars to successfully support and rescue a Muslim people outside of its territory in 1974, when the Greeks, and with the help of the Greek army, were trying to unite the island of Cyprus with Greece. And that support since 1983 and establishment of the TRNC has been ongoing. And in fact, Erdogan has been very successful because he's been the only leader actively pushing to get the Northern Cyprus recognized globally. He's successfully managed to create Northern Cyprus as an observer status in the Turkic Union. We saw in the war with Azerbaijan and Armenia recently over the Karabakh region that the Bayraktar drones were very successful and played an essential role in that war in securing Azerbaijan to reclaim the territory of Karabakh. And that relationship between Erdogan and Ilham Aliyev in Azerbaijan is strengthening day by day. Regarding the Syrians, there's anything between 3 to 4 million Syrians currently in Turkey. And Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, as part of his kind of rush to kind of spur on the nationalistic feelings of some aspects of Turkish society, was saying that he wants to send them all back. Send them where? Whilst Erdogan was very successful in securing the northern territory of Syria, he's created 100,000 homes for those Syrians and is allowing them to move back. However, he's not just going to send them all back just like that, because they've been there for a long time now. Somalia,
It's a sense of responsibility.
absolutely. I mean, we can call this, as the previous Prime Minister Ahmet Davutoğlu, neo-Ottomanism of somewhat, but it goes beyond that. It goes, to a kind of ummah-centric viewpoint. If we look at the relationship with Somalia, for example, the bilateral agreements there, the ongoing support, the military training that Somalia has received, and even Erdogan's kind of key role in trying to get closer relationships between the regional government of Somaliland and the central government of Somalia.
So we're just going to bring in Brother Nazim now, inshallah. Brother Nazim, a question for you now. What do you think this appointment is going to be different to his previous terms or as president?
I think the big difference is domestically there's huge challenges from the economy, from the Syrian refugees. The flight of Syrian refugees is causing domestic tension in Turkey, which played out in the election, which the previous guest has mentioned. And I think now that he has someone like Sinan Ogan, who's in the Erdogan coalition, you can say, we don't know what kind of deal was struck with him. He's more of a nationalist, and I think Erdogan may have conceded to policies to returning refugees. Of course, Erdogan will never entertain the kind of rhetoric which his opponents did during the election, and he's sympathetic towards the refugees. But I think there will be more of a drive and push to find a solution to the refugees. And therefore, I think, despite his unwillingness, he will have to work with Bashar al-Assad, who has been rehabilitated. He's in the fold of the Arab League. So I think there will be attempts to reach out and work with Arab governments, including Assad, to find the refugee crisis. And domestically, because of the economy, I think some of the focus on the broader ummatic concerns may take secondary, maybe secondary to his, the issues relating to Turkey economy and the domestic issue. So I think there will be a shift in focus, but of course he will not give up on the Muslim world and the ummah in the way many other authoritarian rulers in the Middle East and the Arab and Muslim world have done. I still think he will have a concern, but those concerns of the ummatic issues and global Muslim issues may come secondary to some of the domestic matters that are afflicting Turkey at the moment.
Jazakallah khair, Brother Nazim. Brothers and sisters watching at home, this is a live show. You can call in 0203 515 0757. We're going to go over to a short break, inshallah, but please join us back straight after this break, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Welcome back to this Talk to Me special edition about the Turkish election. We spoke a lot about how the Turkish election will impact us as an ummah. We also spoke about some of the international views that Erdogan has and some of his early policies, some of his early relationships. We're joined by three of our guests, Mustafa, Brother Nazim and Brother Hakan, inshallah. But before we go over to them and continue our show, we have a caller, and you can do the same, brothers and sisters. You can call in. This is a live show. The number number is 0203 515 0757. Or you can also leave us a comment on our YouTube page and we'll be able to pick that up, and inshallah we'll be able to address that as well. We'll move over to the caller now. Assalamu alaikum, caller. What's your name and where are you calling from?
My name is...
Go ahead, brother.
I've been watching with interest what you've been saying, and contrast what 20 years from when the Kemalists took over. This contest is between Kemalism, this general election. Out most expressions of Islam from Turkey.
So, brother, we've got a bad line on you. Maybe, inshallah, if you're on loudspeaker, if you could take it off of loudspeaker and try and focus back your conversation. And let's try and get your question in, inshallah. If you can hear me again, brother, go ahead with your question, inshallah. Okay, brother, we've lost your call, inshallah. Give us a call back again, 0203 515 0757. Inshallah, I'm going to go ahead to our guest now, Brother Hakan and Mustafa as well after this. But before we go over, Brother Hakan, just wanted to talk to you about the relationship, a global ummah relationship that Erdogan is going to possess. And not just for the Muslims, but for the non-Muslims as well. What does it mean, his, I would say, finesse in his political skills that he has? What does it mean for us as an ummah, and by extension, everybody else, inshallah?
I mean, you cannot deny the fact that the global media has watched this election, a massive interest. And that's because the global community is watching what's going on. And this election is not just about election in Turkey or election of Erdogan. It became how he defied the entire Western pressure, all those toxic news that came from Western media, how they actually tried to sabotage this whole thing. And people show their sympathy with him. I mean, they've actually connected with him, not just Muslims, but non-Muslims. And you probably heard some of the commentators in the Western media who said to their own leaders, these people have no morality. They actually work with dictators and autocrats everywhere else. They just don't like Erdogan because he doesn't do what they tell him to do. He just does things for Turkey, and he does things for Muslims. And this is why, not just in Turkey, but in the Muslim countries as well, they can see this leadership in Erdogan, and that's why they like him and they support him. He's touched upon everyone's heart with this kind of attitude he has. And he has reached out to many, many Muslim communities when they were in need. And that's what makes him the leader that actually people aspire to have. And that's why they intend to watch how the political development takes place in Turkey.
Brother Mustafa, now following on from that question, international viewpoint, how do you think that now people will regard this president in his next elect now, especially not just us as an ummah, but how do you think that his presidential elect now is going to support not just the ummah, but by extension the globe? Yeah, that's where I want to go to.
Sure. I mean, Erdogan has in many ways received very much bad press from the West. And, you know, it may go back to even Samuel Huntington's book in '96, The Clash of Civilizations. And he actually listed a number of the top or potential leaders of the Muslim world. And none of them hit all the criteria as Turkey did. The only thing, according to Huntington, which was holding Turkey back from being a leader in the Muslim world, was the ideology of the state at the time. Now, Erdogan in many ways is not only being able to not do away with the previous ideology, but somehow come out with a more nuanced approach, which is still Islamic and democratic in a way that is a way that the state will appreciate, or the people of Turkey. In saying that, he's now able to take a leading position in the Muslim world. And we gave some examples regarding Northern Cyprus, Pakistan, for example. They say dost ve kardeş ülke, which is a friend and brother nation. Erdogan recently said that he supports Pakistan's stance on Kashmir, for example. The Qatar blockade, where Turkey was supporting with supplies to Qatar, for example. But you know, you asked about the greater globe, beyond the ummah, let's say. Turkey has played a key role in the conflict in Ukraine by being able to take supplies out from Ukraine and send it to African countries, whereas if it was left to the West, they would have got all the supplies themselves and give the leftovers to the African nations, or the poorer nations, let's say. And Turkey's balancing act between Russia and the West is an example. And so Huntington's example about being a leading Muslim nation doesn't need to be a boogeyman of sorts, but is a light for the world in many ways. Now, does he have any obstacles? Sure, he has economic issues. I mean, he was able to get rid of the 6 digits in the currency, from going to millions of Turkish lira to buy a sweet, for example. It will now cost you a more decent rate, where it was 2 to 3 lira to the pound. Now it's about 23 lira to the pound. So that is going to be a major issue for Turkey to kind of develop. But is it as bad as it was pre-Erdogan? No, it wasn't. So that power projection that Turkey has at the moment, I see it developing in the Muslim and non-Muslim world.
So I just want to bring in Brother Nazim here now, inshallah. Brother Nazim, following on from this point, do you think there's something more, or if not something different, that Erdogan can do, and maybe Turkey as a whole, to change this viewpoint that Brother Hakan and Brother Mustafa has touched on?
Well, the mere fact that we speak of Turkey in this way, what kind of impact it would have on the globe and the Western and European response, shows how important and significant Turkey is, not just because of its location, but as a country historically, and now, of course. The big issue for Turkey, as the previous guest had mentioned, is the balancing act. I think what's changed now, Muslim countries, including Turkey, including Saudi Arabia, despite what people may say about MBS, and they're actually in a much stronger position in relation to the West. The West, for many, many decades, have been more concerned about their place and position in the global system, to preserve their hegemony, preserve their authority, and they're less concerned about the people of the Middle East. We know that for a fact. And I think that, and now there's a shift partly because of what's happening in Russia, what's happening in China, and countries like Saudi Arabia are exploiting this. They are realizing that, with the US moving away, leaving a vacuum, they can strike a deal with Iran. Erdogan has realized he can also play this as well. He can use this to his advantage. The West does not want Erdogan and Turkey to move closer to Russia and China in particular. So there's things he can bargain with, including, for example, the accession of Sweden into NATO. He can demand things. He can continue to make, continue to demand and make negotiations that is to the benefit of Turkey and the people of Turkey. So Muslim countries, this is a big, broader picture. Muslim countries, I would say, especially Turkey, especially Saudi Arabia, they are in a much, much stronger position they were before in the global system. And you will see from now on them taking more of an advantage and exploiting the situation to strike better deals with the West. I see that more and more in at least in the next 5-6 years while Erdogan is in power.
Alhamdulillah, Jazakallah khair for that, brother. Now, you mentioned something very, I didn't realize that the lira was in a way that had 2 digits, and then he came and changed this, and you would have to spend a lot of liras to get something, and now with this reform he's managed to change all of that stuff, inshallah. So how do you think that he's going to change more policies in order to benefit the Turkish community, and if so, what do you think he can change?
Well, Erdogan has been able to direct investment within the country to various areas that were often left. So, for example, Urfa, for example, on the border with Syria, was very much left. It was being invested in during the time of Erdogan. Every state or province within Turkey now has an airport, for example. And so that uniting factor, regardless of, as I mentioned earlier, about the Cemevis, the Alevis have now got the power sources by the government. Minority languages are approved now, so there is a TRT for the Kurdish language, there's TRT in the Arabic language for the Arab minorities within Turkey. And so in many respects, he is that conservative figure who is uniting these polarized aspects in this kind of Turkey still finding itself in many ways. What is it to be a Turk? And so Erdogan is being able to be that nuanced figure.
Alhamdulillah, so he's uniting not just the minorities, but as a whole, he's uniting the Turkish people. MashaAllah, brothers and sisters, please join us back after the break where we can take your live calls. All you have to do is call that number 0203 515 0757. You can get involved in the conversation. You can even leave us a comment on our YouTube page and we'll pick that up. We're just going to go to a short break now. Don't stay tuned and come back, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters, and welcome back to the last segment of this special Talk to Me show where we're talking about the election in Turkey, inshallah. We've been focusing a lot about the history of Erdogan's early early political career and now in his second run for his president, inshallah. We're going to go over to a phone call now. Assalamu alaikum, brother or sister. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Assalamu alaikum salam.
Wa alaikum salam. What's your name and where are you calling from?
I'm Nazim from Harrow.
And how will you be getting involved with the show today, inshallah?
Brother, I just like to ask the guest is two parties. One is basic like Islamic and the other one is secular. What I found amazing is on the secular party, I saw many women, I don't know men about men, with hijab and missing and supporting the secular party. It's a bit surprising. And alhamdulillah, I pray Allah that brought back the President Erdogan, and I hope and Allah will help him in his job, inshallah.
Ameen. Okay, brother, that's an amazing question. So I'm going to go ahead to Brother Mustafa here. So the brother's asking that although the two parties have two different political viewpoints, we saw different people, even people that are observing the hijab, brothers who look apparent that they're practicing the religion, attracted to both. I mean, any view on that?
Sure. So that comes down to, in many respects, Erdogan's success in his tenure as in leading Turkey. You know, pre-AK Party, it was a lot more clearer before. this is the secular party, and the somewhat irreligious people will be more inclined to voting for them, and then you have the religious camp who would vote for people who are more Islamically inclined. Now, over this time, the Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu and people from his party and other parties, in fact, have realized that they can't go back to how things were pre-AK Party, i.e. the banning of the hijab, for example. It just won't be accepted. So in many respects, Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu and other parties have tried to show themselves as inclusive. So this is one of the reasons why. The other reason is, although we may be looking at Turkey from an outsider's perspective, oh, it's improving religiously, the human rights have improved and such, when you're living in Turkey, you're having to deal with the Turkish lira. And the power of the lira, as I mentioned initially, when Erdogan had removed those 0 digits, it was about 2 or 3 liras to the pound. Currently, it's about 23 lira to the pound, whilst people are still earning and having to pay their rent at a similar rate, right? If you're importing goods, you're having to pay in dollars.
Wow.
Right?
Okay.
You have the Gen Z factor. So we have 20 years of Erdogan in power. Gen Z does not remember how things were before then, right? Great, Erdogan's done great things, they all acknowledge that. But how is he going to deal with the current inflation, for example? These are legitimate concerns which they have, and some of them feel, well, it may be time for him to leave, and that was one of his biggest concerns. Other things externally, for example, he placing his bets with Mohamed Morsi, for example, in Egypt, where there was a great alliance had been created with Egypt. When he was ousted, it meant bad relations with Egypt. Similar with Sudan, al-Bashir, for example, they made great deals there, lost on that front as well, and similarly with Syria as well, with Bashar al-Assad. So it's not black and white.
Yeah, of course. Nothing's always black and white. We're going to go over to a question from YouTube, and I believe this question is for Brother Hakan. So the question is, what are your views on constitutional changes? Do you think that Erdogan will initiate it, and will it be beneficial generally?
I think studio told we couldn't hear anything Mustafa said.
Right, I'm going to repeat the question again, inshallah. What are your views on constitutional change? Do you think that Erdogan will initiate it, and will it be beneficial generally?
This is I mean, I'll be honest with you, this was never part of like a debate during the election. Turkey needs a new constitution. He did say even long before the election that Turkey needs a new constitution, and I know that there is quite a lot of work being done to prepare a new constitution. And so, although it was not made a big issue within the campaigns of both parties in the election time, it is an issue that needs to be tackled, and it will be. And I know he's prepared for it. He will present something to the nation as and when he's ready, but it's not the priority. As Brother Nassim said earlier, the economy is the number one issue that he'll tackle with. And you will see as soon as he forms his government and appointed ministers, etc., and sworn in, he will make a lot of statements about the economic recovery, earthquake zone, the redevelopment and regentrification of the whole area, as well as other issues that's outstanding. Constitution will come in, but right now it's not the priority. That's my view. And I think it's something that he knows he needs to do it. The opposition parties know it. Everybody knows it. It will come, but it's not the priority.
Jazakallah khair. I believe we have another question from a caller, and this was from Brother Ali, inshallah. And I think I can direct it to Brother Nazim. If we can bring up the graphics for that question, inshallah. I believe the question was, what is the main comparison between Ataturk and Erdogan?
The main comparison, I think Erdogan will. Well, it is. I mean, they're both, of course, huge figures when it comes to Turkey. But I think Erdogan has been in power more than Ataturk, and I think in the grand scale of things in history, I think Erdogan will go down as the number one leader of Turkey, and the man, despite what Ataturk has done, I think the reputation of Erdogan will be enhanced, and in the long term, he would be the major figure of Turkey. That is my view, and partly because also, if you think about the politics, why has Erdogan persistently won elections despite the downturn of the economy, despite earthquake, despite the disaster, he keeps winning elections. Why? It's, for me, for example, it's partly because the dislike and despise and hatred towards the secularists in Turkey is deep in the national DNA. Given what they had done over decades, for nearly 100 years or so, you know, there's a deep animosity, hostility to what they would do if they come to power. So even though Turkey is having so many problems in all fronts, Erdogan keeps winning because they don't want a repeat of the Ataturks. Even though opponents like Kemal say, we're not like the Ataturks of the past, we're not the secularists of the past, we have reformed. And partly they have reformed. They are not the extreme secularists that had existed at the time of Ataturk and the military rules that came afterwards. I tend to believe that. But given what Ataturk has turned Turkey into, and given what Erdogan has done to Turkey over the last 3 or so decades, I think in the grand scheme of things, when historians look back, they will say Erdogan has been the major figure of Turkey over the last 200, after 100 years, in the last 200 years. That's what they would say. That is my estimation.
Alhamdulillah. We're going to bring up all our guests now, inshallah, and we're at the last section of this segment, inshallah. So I just want to ask a question to each of our guests, inshallah. Starting with Brother Mustafa, in 10 seconds, I want you to tell us what you would like to see for the future of Turkey. In 10 seconds.
I want Turkey to increase its regional power. I want it to be a peacemaker in the world, and it's already playing in that regards. It's on the right trajectory. As long as it can solve its economy, then that will be its route to progress.
Okay, and a similar question to Brother Nazim.
Turkey restored pride in the Muslim world, restored solidarity with the Muslim world, and I hope Erdogan can find a solution to the economy where he can keep many of the refugees as part of the solution to the economic crisis. I think that would be a perfect solution for Turkey's problems. You solve the refugee crisis and you solve the economic crisis by solving two of those problems in one. I hope he can find a way to do that.
Okay, inshallah, Brother Hakan, same question to you, but I just want you to elaborate a little bit more what you would want to see for the future of Turkey and an extension, not just for Turkey, but as us globally, ummah, and even Muslims and non-Muslims.
Brother, you know, this theme that we keep talking about, it even when we're in our own houses and when we link up with the brothers, about unity of ummah, this concept of ummah. You know, we need to understand what that is first. I think if Turkey can actually stimulate this love and peace that we're supposed to have for each other first, and then we can talk about the unity of ummah. And if Turkey was the place to start that with, I'd be really happy with that. But it doesn't just happen with a country or a society in that country. I think we have to start in Turkey first with uniting the kind of population here, because it was really quite divisive election. I must say this was the hardest election, most divisive. And so we've got to start from there. But then we've got to spread that out so we can actually reach out. I mean, days of communication and being together as this
Brother Hakan, Jazakallah khair for that. I believe your parting comment is great, that we need to change ourselves before we look for other change, inshallah. We will all the best to President Erdogan. And this was a special Talk to Me show. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.